So this is part 4 of our 5-part educational series, Insurance, Managing Your Risk While Restarting. We have 2 speakers today. Our first speaker is going to be Bob Cosenzo. He is the Vice President of Safety and Loss Control at Lancer Insurance Company. Since 1985, Lancer has been one of the nation's leading insurers of the passenger transportation industry. Bob is responsible for coordinating the Lancer Safety Engineering Program, Loss Control Program, marketing and seminar preparation for commercial auto customers, including motor coach, limousine, truck, and van. Prior to his safety and loss control responsibilities, he founded Lancer's Compliance Services in 1988, a comprehensive drug and alcohol testing service. Our second speaker today will be Michelle Wiggin. She is the Assistant Vice President and National Commercial Marketing Manager for National Interstate Insurance Company. She has been with the company since 1991 and is their longest tenured employee. Her responsibilities include marketing for National Interstate Passenger Transportation Division, including traditional and captive insurance programs. Through her 29-year National Interstate career, Michelle has been actively involved in the passenger transportation industry. She currently serves on the board of directors for the ABA and the board of governors for the ABA Foundation, and is a member of the Bus Industry Safety Council. So I'm going to turn this over to Bob and get lots of information today.
Thank you, Vicki. First, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity. Everyone at Lancer Insurance Company is well aware of the difficult times everyone's facing. We share that with you, and we're pleased to have been able to do the best we think we can do and keep trying to do the best we can do with responding to your needs, your insurance coverage needs. And for all of us, this is uncharted territory. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I only wish that we were all together at CBA because we always have a great time, but it's a pleasure to be able to do this. So my presentation is going to be focusing on some of the risk issues about the specifics of getting back to business. And then I'll turn it over to Michelle, who's going to focus on the larger insurance market. As usual, both Michelle and I are be able to answer questions for you. And we work very well together on these types of presentations. And the purpose of all of this is to get you thinking a little bit, perhaps a little bit out of the box, or get you back to thinking about things that that are challenging you. Okay, so let's get started. Michael's going to control the slides for me, so we're going to move to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to focus on 4 areas: your business, what it looked like before, what it looks like now, what you think it might look like in the future. We're going to look at employee issues. We're going to talk a little bit about vehicles and focusing on how to manage and what you're going to be doing with your vehicles. And then finally, we'll talk about some customer interactions. Michael? Okay, so regarding your business, it's very important that you focus, in addition to the national information and all the information from the CDC and a variety of other places, it's really important to focus on your local and state laws related to COVID and COVID management. Some states are very active in this and others aren't. So just please look at your state and local laws in relation to how you're going to operate your business. I hope everyone has been evaluating your operational and business strategy. Many of you have begun to look at other markets or other ways to do business, which is terrific. However, when you do that, it's important to evaluate how that will impact your operation from top to bottom. Because adding a new contract or doing a type of work that you haven't done before with a vehicle, perhaps a different size vehicle, really does change things, both from a risk management perspective and an outcome perspective. And what you don't want happening is any increase in claims or driver error related to change in business approach. I would highly recommend that everyone assess your crisis management and communication plan. We have, over the years, done crisis simulations and management, provided management information to the members of CBA, this is a good time to do that. Some of what you're able to do is to update those plans. Your plans are changed. We've been in a crisis. This is a long, an 8-month long crisis, a 7 to 8 month long crisis that'll go on for another few months. Crisis management is critical. It's not just dealing with a crash or something else. This is a much larger issue. So update that stuff. Review all your business contracts. If you haven't done that already, some of you have done that. A variety of those contracts have changed, or the needs have changed. And in fact, it may have altered the contract to the point where the contract is no longer legally binding on either side. We've seen a number of transit or line run based contracts with transit agencies being withdrawn or canceled based on changes in the way business is taking place right now, having nothing to do with the bus company, but maybe to do with the transit or agency. And in fact, transit agencies have begun to take back certain line runs in order to keep their drivers and vehicles moving. So just be aware of that and work with your corporate attorney to deal with any changes in contracts. Most of you have touched base with your suppliers. We recommend that you do that, and a lot of you have done that already. Develop a COVID-based safety plan for employees and vehicles. Many of you have done that. If you're not operating and you are planning to start back up soon, or if you're only operating a few buses, that safety plan, you may have that safety plan. What I'd like you to start doing now is thinking about how will you implement and manage that plan should you get back to full operations in the next, say, 6 months. You may have a plan for steam cleaning and sanitizing the buses and how your employees are going to manage things. But when we think about that without the buses running, it's different than, I want you to start thinking about that plan and how you're going to manage it if every bus was running. And would it produce additional stress and pressure on other parts of your operation or your staffing? And finally, for your business, establish a plan for returning staff and visitors. That's an internal, people coming into the office or people coming to your location. Have a plan for that. At Lancer currently, we are at 25% of office operations, and we're moving to about 50% in the next month. And we've testing that out. That could change. So our 25% plan went pretty smoothly, and we're hoping our 50% plan of returning to the office is the same. We are currently not allowing visitors, and we're not doing only employees allowed in the building under certain circumstances. So that plan's interesting. And, again, it's something that moves along day to day. All right, next slide. So employees, when we think about employees, as you have employees coming back in a staggered fashion, who are you actually having return? And how do you decide for returning employees, both in the office and in the vehicles? So this is a good time to update job descriptions and responsibilities. Things may change. You may have lost some employees. You may have furloughed some employees. You may not be bringing all employees back. And that may require a change in what people are doing. So update your job descriptions and responsibilities if you can. How are you communicating with employees? Very, very important. Everyone's under pressure. Everyone's stressed out in certain ways. Everyone's wondering what's happening. So how you communicate with employees is important. There's some very good business material out there for communicating with employees, whether it's through Zoom meetings or GoToMeetings or emails. And basically, instead of saying, "How are you?" it might make sense to say, "Tell me tell me what's happening in your life situation now. Tell me what's happening about how it's best for us to communicate." Engaging the employee with communication is important because some people may not want to return to their jobs. Some people may want to return, but may not return with full attention to the details you need, and you're going to have to evaluate that. Okay, develop a protocol based on federal and state guidelines to provide a safe environment and communicate those plans and guidelines to your employees. Employees are just like passengers, are equally concerned. Those working in the office have a contained environment. Those actually out on vehicles, that driver may vary, or tour guide, or however you're working, may actually have some really very serious concerns, and addressing them is important, and being open to communication is important. Some employees may not be able to abide by your guidelines, both federal, state, and your company guidelines for how to work, and that has to be evaluated. You don't want someone in the driver's seat, or on the bus, even a passenger, who is going to reject what your plan is or think it's unsafe and start communicating that. Okay. Last bullet on this slide: make sure employees have access to PPE supplies and keep in touch with them. It's a different time than usual, when sometimes drivers are out on trips for lengthy periods of time with a daily call or some limited communication. We're in a position now, or you're in a position now, where communicating and keeping in touch with the driver is a lot more important. What's going on? How are they doing? What experiences they are having? What's happening at the venues? Are you able to park? Are people able to get into the hotels if you're traveling? If you're doing line runs or shuttle, how is that impacting the driver's ability to actually do that safely? So we're going to get further into drivers in a little bit. Next slide. Here we are. We're right at the drivers. So from a practical perspective, if drivers have not been driving, or have been driving in very limited ways over the last 6 to 8 months, you have to go through your driver records, making sure license, medical, drug and alcohol clearinghouse, everything is up to date. There have been a number of suspensions of certain regulations during this period, and they all have expiration dates. So even if a driver can't get their license renewed or the medical done because of COVID restrictions, you still are responsible to make sure you keep track of that, and when those restrictions are lifted in your area, to follow through with them. So even though the federal regulations may have suspensions, if you can get these kinds of the license, the medical, and the MVR, everything up to date, go ahead and do that. It's, from a risk management perspective, it shows effort, and it shows a willingness to be in the moment here. Hours of service. If you're bringing a driver back, a couple of things you have to think about. First of all, and we'll get to a little more detail on this, their hours of service. What have they been doing in the last 7 days, on a very specific note of hours of service? Have they been doing other work? Have they driving for other companies? So make sure that you are aware of what the driver has been doing, and how you're going to get those 7 days started. Drug and alcohol testing. So the first question is did you furlough the employee, and is it a new hire? Some drivers you're bringing back actually will be new hires, because they haven't worked or driven in the last 6 or 8 months. You did not have them in your random pool. You suspended that. If you suspended all of that, then you may have to do a pre-employment drug and alcohol test. So just think about, and I'll be happy to work with you, or anyone at Lancer will be happy to work with you on figuring that out. But if you furloughed people and did not keep your random drug and alcohol testing pool active, even if you weren't testing, then it's very possible that you might have to do a pre-employment drug and alcohol test. So just be aware that bringing people back is a bit different than if someone had just taken a few-week vacation. Okay, checking MVRs and any other kinds of reports, very important. Consider road tests. We'll get to that in more detail. Provide updates safety for your safety and operating training manuals and training approaches, and be ready to retrain drivers on your vehicles, both from a driving perspective and a maintenance perspective. And try to set up a focus on driver's health and safety while on the road. That will be a big help. And review all company policies, including accident scene management. Drivers who haven't been driving are not in practice of thinking about things that you think they're ready to do. So just remember, you've been out of, many managers have been out of of the normal management process for 6 to 8 months, and you're kind of struggling with how do we get this back. Please think of the drivers in the same way. All right, Michael, we can move on. Vehicles. Okay, so checking my time here. Vehicles, it's important to make sure you have the proper coverage. Work with your insurance company. Make sure any vehicle you've suspended or a vehicle that has not been fully insured is back on, and make sure you talk to your broker about this. Make sure the insurance company knows through the broker what you're trying to do. If you're adding a vehicle back for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, it's necessary to communicate that. And email is generally not the way to do that. Just be very active to make sure your vehicles are covered. Focus on any details of inspections that needed to be completed, both internal and external, your own preventive maintenance programs and service intervals, as well as local, regional, and state federal requirements. Have your maintenance staff review and update all maintenance files. What's been happening with that vehicle? Any vehicle that has not been driven very frequently or has not been started and run around the yard or driven around the yard at any regular interval needs a real strong maintenance plan. Parts inventory and reorder is necessary. This is a great way, if you think of inventory, this could be a good time, if you haven't done it, to really thin down your inventory and sell whatever you can or reorder whatever you need to manage the vehicles you're using now versus maybe your full fleet. So it could be a reason to do some inventory control, and that might add to some of your reducing some of your financial burden if you can do that. Making sure all federal inspections, CBSA inspections are up to date with the proper permits and registration. And when it comes to ELDs, telematics, and cameras, update all your software. Companies, even if they've suspended or you've suspended your work with them on these electronics, there may have been software updates. Making sure that they all work, making sure that the drivers are reorganized and retrained to think about what you're doing. You may only have you may have ELDs, but you may not have your telematics and cameras back up. Again, all of this is communication. And then again, finally, making sure all insurance and this paperwork is available on the vehicle. That includes ELD information for the driver, so that the driver is not put in a position for an inspection or any other situation where they're unable to answer a question. All right, next slide. All right, now returning drivers. Let's focus specifically to your returning drivers. I'd like you to think about assuming that your driver is almost like a new driver. And kind of thinking about who is coming back. Are some of your drivers coming back out of economic necessity versus really wanting to? Are they high risk? Do they really want to come back? Some of your most loyal and reliable drivers you rely upon may not be the best drivers for you right now because of their own concerns and anxiety and fears about COVID, their own health, their age, their family situation, whatever it may be. So it really is important to just not to assume it's business as usual. Really evaluate any of your existing drivers as you would a new driver. And really the benefit of doing that is you should have, if you have good communication, is you can really actually talk to them. And maybe they're what you assign them to or what they drive or what kinds of trips they drive, that may change. You may be able to have them do local stuff, but not over the road. Some people may be willing to do over the road, but not local. So be open-minded. Talk with them, interview them, ask them, what have you been doing over the last 7 months? Have they been driving a truck? Have they been working retail? Have they been sitting at home watching television? What's been happening? The way they respond to what have you been doing over the last 7 months will tell you how much work you have to do to get them back to their high level of performance. It is important to evaluate reaction to COVID and its impact on their view of driving and being with passengers. It's one thing from a management perspective to have all the paperwork in order and have the driver ready and have someone to drive a bus on an actual trip. It's another thing to understand what their driving experience has been like and what their reactions to being with passengers will be, and how they'll communicate with those passengers. So one question that's come up, and I'm actually working on some material that I'll be happy to share with you, is what do you do is dealing with the difficult passenger or dealing with a difficult situation, such as driving in an urban area where there may be a sudden or unplanned or unknown protest, and the bus being stuck in that situation. And that goes back to the crisis management element of how do you keep drivers up to date and how do you work on that. So we will actually begin to put together some materials on simply how to protect the driver and passengers in that situation. So it is important to test all that out with the drivers and talk with them about it, and evaluate their communication. You know that your existing staff that are good communicators and others that don't prefer not to communicate. With this sudden change in the way the world is, drivers who don't communicate or don't like to communicate and are relatively quiet may have to be trained in how to communicate with passengers and others around the impact of COVID. Do a road test. Have the driver get back in the vehicle they'll be driving or the size of the vehicle they were driving. Acuity, decision-making, and agility may have changed over the last 8 months. They may just not be concentrating because of other concerns and worries. They may not be concentrating as much. So again, a road test and an acuity ability to decide, how strong their ability to manage your vehicle at this time, that's a very important business and risk management decision. Retrain all drivers to new PPE routines and routes, vehicles, and managing passengers in public places. So I can't urge you strongly enough to think about the difference in routes and the difference in the type of work. If someone's used to charter over the road with the travel and tourism and approach, and now you have them doing line runs or simply doing military work, there may be a different approach. There may be a different approach. There may be a different approach that you need to take with them. So PPE routines, again, you may have a plan and a perspective, and maintenance may have a plan and perspective. Is the driver really going to follow that? Or if they're supposed to be wiping down seats and other kinds of things in the bus, are they really going to do that? And how do you provide the resources and the training for that? Routes, again, if you're changing routes or having new types of contracts or business, that's all high risk, even for your most successful drivers. How to manage the vehicle and passengers in public places, very important. This is communication based. And again, if the driver finds themselves in a difficult situation, such as being in the middle of a protest, they need to have a plan. So we'll get to that in the next week or so and provide that to you. All right, next slide. Review your policy on loading luggage, boarding and alighting the bus. What are you doing about that? Who's loading the luggage? Is the driver loading the luggage? Are they wearing gloves? Are gloves useful in that situation? Is the passenger loading the luggage? How many people are crowding around the luggage bay? All important things for you to be thinking about, because all of that is exposure to risk, both passenger claims and maybe work comp claims. Boarding and alighting the bus. So we always say, be at the steps of the bus, help people on or off. How are you handling that in this situation? Generally speaking, you want some social distancing, but under certain circumstances, the driver is going to have to step in and help people board the bus or get off the bus. Same with wheelchair lifts and wheelchair passengers. If you're, how are you going to handle that? And how are you training the driver? How are they trained to communicate with the passenger? What is the passenger capable of? What is the driver capable of? So please think about all of that. If you have questions about how to do that, we're here to help you. But in reality, if someone is injured on a bus, if there's a claim in or around the bus, your policy is going to cover that. So it's going to get back down to your policy and planning. Review your directions on managing difficult passengers. The driver should never be in a position to not be able to drive safely because of an interaction with a passenger. So it's very important, particularly if people don't want to wear a mask or people are complaining about other passengers. Again, I don't want to be negative here, but the fact is that we put a lot of responsibility on the driver, and it's never a good idea to have the driver distracted by the passengers. And we always talk about that, but now there's a whole new set of stressors and anxiety that can make it difficult for the driver to manage the passenger. Please come up with a plan for training the driver and actually doing some role play with how to deal with difficult passengers. And again, we have some material on that. We'll be happy to share it with you. Update all communication procedures and phone numbers. Just things change. You may have changed, you may have limited some of your telecommunication process. You may have changed your providers. There's a variety of things that happen. Drivers may have changed their providers. Any kind of economic pressure may cause people to change how they communicate. So just update all of that. Have driver test all ELD camera and telematic hardware and software. Again, the software is important as well as the hardware. Stuff that hasn't been used or has been shut down for months has to be tested. So between maintenance and the driver, make sure they're comfortable with all that. And finally, reviewing all routing, road construction, venue parking, drop-off, pickup locations, loading procedures. All of that may have changed to some of the venues you're going to or the roads you're driving over the last 8 months. There's been a significant amount of road construction during this last 8 months, simply because there have been funds for that, and there have often been fewer cars on the road in certain areas. So all of that creates risks that the driver has to be informed of and provided training materials and information about. So your dispatch, your operation folks, and your drivers need to be working together on all of that. Venue parking has changed. There are some venues that have blocked off half of their parking spaces, every other parking space. Some venues are not allowing buses in. They're requiring drop off and pick up at different locations than in the past. The time to figure that out is prior to the trip. As we always say, there's nothing new in that. It's just making sure we work on that. Okay, next slide. Okay, before we start this I'm going to show you. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you a 90-second video, just to give you the background. This is in Arkansas, and this is a situation relating to routing, and drivers' awareness of where they're going and what they're doing. The reason I'm showing you this is for you to think about this, and we'll talk about it right after the video. And then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions, or I can respond to questions or any quick things coming up in the chat, and then I'll turn it over to Michelle. So let's watch this video and see if you can begin to think about how this happened and what the driver and the company could have done to avoid it. Okay, thank you, Michael. Go ahead.
I saw that bridge and I'm like, oh, this is fine.
Some call it the Golden Gate Bridge of Arkansas.
It's impressive.
The prized structure off Highway 187 caught attention over the weekend after this video was posted. It shows a 35-ton charter bus crossing the bridge, which you can see buckling. Here at the start of the bridge, there's a sign that clearly states the weight limit is 10 tons. But the people of Beaver tell me that these types of incidents happen all the time.
It's a one-lane wood deck bridge on a state highway.
The Arkansas Department of Transportation was out today inspecting the bridge during a routine maintenance check. Danny Stracely says his workers just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
They were there last week. They remain up there just doing regular routine maintenance, like replacing the wood planks that comprise the bridge deck over there.
After almost 70 years in service, RDOT says the bridge is up to par. And right now, there's not one, but two warnings of the weight limit before you cross.
there's over 62 signs between where you get onto our road and when you hit the bridge. If they didn't read the first 20, they certainly didn't notice it.
Longtime Beaver resident Roger Schnapp has no fear when driving over the bridge, but he's nervous the increased traffic and headlines over the years will take the bridge away from the small Arkansas town.
Dear to a lot of people in the town as well as in the county.
In Beaver, Peyton Yeager, KNWA, Northwest Arkansas News.
Okay, Michael, can we go to the next slide?
Saw that bridge.
Okay, so at this time, we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. Michael, if we want to take the screen down, we can. And then maybe however you want to open it up to discussion and questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And then I'll turn it over to Michelle, who's going to take some of this information about risk and issues related to your operation and review with you how it relates to the overall your insurance and then the overall insurance market. Okay, questions, answers. How do we want to do this?
As always, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and just click the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and we can open up your mic or go ahead and type in a question. So far, Bob, we don't have any questions. So,
all right, this may be the only presentation that's actually completely on time and early, done finished early.
Like, you don't have to worry about it, Bob.
All right.
So we have a question from Kevin. It says, how do we deal with driver attitudes? We know what we're doing.
Yes, excellent question, Kevin. And I would refer you back to the last 30 years of your experience as to how you deal with that. That is part of the driver evaluation right now, and which drivers should be working and can be working. You may have drivers who are excellent physical drivers and have excellent driving technique, but are not going to be able to adjust their attitude to the current situation. That is a risk issue you have to evaluate. And you do that by communication, discussion, and asking the driver, are you going to be able to adjust to this new world we live in? If they say no, I'm not adjusting to that, I won't change the way I do things, that's a business decision that carries enormous risk. And my risk management hat tells me that driver shouldn't be driving. That may not be practical to your operation. However, you've got to take control of that. And this is a different time. This is not just a driver not liking the group or not liking the venue or the traffic. This is a driver who may create a claims risk, not only physically driving the vehicle, but with a passenger. Any altercation with a passenger, be it verbal or not, can become a claim. So you have to respond. You've got to be tough with this. Your business coming back may not be the business as it was before. Your employment needs and your driver needs may not be the same as before. And that's hard, particularly with experienced drivers. The other issue is there may be an opportunity here for some companies to hire different drivers in different situations because people are shuffling around and moving around. And again, following all the recommendations made in the presentation for existing drivers, you have to have a very, very careful evaluation process. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks, Kevin. And if Ginny, I'm going to allow you to talk here. Just unmute your microphone and it should be good.
Thank you. I really don't know how to phrase the question, so I'm just going to say the idea here. Okay. You've talked about all these things about getting back to business, but we're not going back to full business. So how is that going to be handled with insurance? Because, 2 trips a month isn't going to warrant full insurance. Right. So maybe I'm off topic. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's fun and it's a good segue. Every insurance company is a little bit different. I know for Lancer, we're allowing and having folks put vehicles on full coverage for a day or 2 or 3, whatever the trip is at a time, and then going back to the reduced coverage. So that's very important. It is important to recognize that operating on a limited basis creates a lot of pressure and stress for you, for Ginny, and for any operator, because all of what I talked about and all of what Michelle will talk about is being translated into a narrow little gauntlet of time and trips. But nonetheless, you still have to in some way evaluate all those things, because if on that trip there is a claim, a valid claim, even not a serious claim, all of the issues of how you manage that trip will relate back in that claims management to how you're managing your company. And if you're covering all those details and you have a plan in place, it can be very simple. It can just be a checklist. That will help, because it shows that you're a responsible company, you're aware of what you're doing, you're aware of the changes, and you follow federal and state and local guidelines for COVID and driver management. So, and then beyond that, I would recommend just talking to your individual insurance company, anyone talking to their company about how to handle short-term add-ons or deletions.
All right, any other questions? Like Kevin mentioned, noticing changes in speed and increasing in the general population.
Yes.
And I don't know. Do you want to speak to that?
Touched on that a little bit, Michael.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so for all of the AAA and other kinds of studies are showing that even with fewer cars on the road, there have been more accidents in passenger vehicles, more injuries, and in some locations, more fatalities based on the way people are driving. So that is a very good point, Kevin. And I know you've been on the road and you've seen some of this stuff. And the fact is, people are distracted. People are stressed. People are believing they have the right to not follow rules if in their car versus maybe going into a store or a restaurant. So that is a very important risk factor for defensive driving information, but it's also part of what you have to evaluate in your driver. Are they one of those people? Are they one of the people who are stressed and distracted and doing what they have to do reluctantly, because that's your $5 million risk. Remember, every time that vehicle leaves the yard, the driver goes out with a check for $5 million or more. When the driver returns, if there's no problem, they hand you back that check for $5 million. It's no different now than any before. It's just that there are many more stress factors to evaluate. Michelle, I don't know if you want.
Well, we got one more question here.
Okay. And then we'll...
So Jasmine asked, what type of documentation should we have for drivers regarding COVID-related training?
So you're asking if the drivers have had COVID training outside of work? Is that what you're asking, Jasmine? No.
I think she's asking what kind of documentation should the company keep.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. Yeah, great question, Jasmine. I think what you should do is, if you want to go to anyone can go to the Lancer website. Our homepage has a significant amount of COVID information and links to all of the CDC and all other. So there's tons of that stuff available to you, and it's available in a variety of locations. I would say to you that you should follow all CDC guidelines and just utilize CDC and state health and other local information. Use the existing information, provide it to the driver, talk to them about it, maybe do a brief just summary of what you've done, and have the driver document that the driver reviewed the material, was provided the material, was trained on the material, whatever it may be. If you look at the UMA has a clean bus kind of program, and there's a variety of those things around. Again, those are voluntary certificate kinds of, we've done this certificate, we did this. Those are all the kinds of risk management controls that would help you. So again, using CDC guidelines, using all the CDC federal and state local material. You don't have to make up your own material, and I don't recommend it. Document that the driver received it, how it was communicated, and have the driver acknowledge that they received it. if you're doing the clean bus program with UMA or one of the manufacturers, just have that documentation prepared. All of that is helpful should there be a claim. Michelle, do you have
No, I
anything to
totally
add?
agree. It's like
Yeah.
any training. COVID training is not really any different than any other training that you offer. Just make sure whatever you're training, either keep a copy of it, keep a sign off for the driver that they understand the training, and just keep it in their file along with all of your other training sign offs that you have for them.
Okay. So Michael, I'll turn it over to Michelle. Are we ready to turn over to Michelle?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah,
All
and
right,
there's
so-
one more question. I don't know if you saw that, Michael.
I didn't.
Okay, yes. So Don is asking if you've seen some companies installing barriers or curtains between seats. Where do the insurance companies stand on this possible hazard?
I'll answer then. Michelle can answer. As long as it's anything added to the vehicle should be related to the manufacturer of that vehicle. And anything you add at all should go through the OEM process and making sure that the manufacturer has a response, or either have them install it or have someone, if you choose to do that, have that installation done by a reputable company that has and documentation of their acknowledgement that that you're not liable for their installation. So that's one side. The other side is it necessary? We recommend following CDC and federal guidelines on everything. We are not endorsing, at Lancer at least, we're not endorsing any products. We're not recommending products. We're encouraging folks to follow the CDC, federal, state, local guidelines, and certainly to work with the manufacturer before you install anything in the bus. That's our perspective. Michelle?
Well, I would just add to that, obviously the same situation with following CDC and regular guidelines, but I would also, before you do install anything, because there are some aftermarket things that you can add on to your vehicles that aren't necessarily federally recognized as being safe. So my addition to Bob's comments would be that you talk to your FMCSA and your DOT inspectors. These guys know what, and they'll be able to tell you what the biggest issue is when you're installing any kind of barrier is the egress issue. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that, and don't just assume because somebody's selling you a product that it is going to pass your inspection. So the last thing you want is for a vehicle not to pass inspection because you didn't verify with the local and the federal authorities on, you know, your vehicles being compliant.
Excellent. That's a great point. Yeah, excellent. So again, you know, these are hard decisions. None of this is in the book. None of this is in the experience we've all had. And we're all struggling a bit. But if we put our heads together and begin to process and just ask the question of a Lancer, or I might speak for National, let's say, we're two companies that, look, we're active, we're involved, call us, email us, reach out. I know from our experiences, and Michelle will reiterate this, we're here to work with you. That's why we do all of this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and let's see.
I am going to share my screen with everybody. Great. Hopefully you can all see that. As Bob said at the beginning, we hope everyone is staying safe and sane. Sane might not be as easy as we all hoped. You know, who would have thought in the middle of March that we would be where we are today? Bob, as always, did a great job on the operations and talking about your drivers and getting back on the road. You all know Bob, he's always done a great job. So I have a tough act to follow. My presentation is going to be a little bit different. It's not focused on the operation. It's more talking just to help you understand what is going on in the insurance world and why your insurance is, why your rates are going up, why you're hearing talk about excess and different parts of and different policies that you buy. I'm going to focus on auto liability. It's a huge driver of our business. So I'll get started. And Michael, I'm not able to switch slides. There we go. Okay. So my topics for today are, we're going to talk about the current insurance marketplace. I'd like you all to understand a little bit about how the insurance marketplace works, what the indicators are, what some companies that the insurance marketplace depends on for the information that we use, along with all of your information, what you can do to protect your company. Liability in the day of COVID. Obviously, people are asking, you know, are we going to get sued? We'll get to that. And there is nothing more important now than the relationships that you have with your insurance carrier, your customers, your drivers, your employees. So more than ever, relationships really matter. So I'm going to start off with just a 10,000-foot overview of the commercial auto insurance marketplace. And some of you might have heard of a company called Conning. Conning is a worldwide insurance research firm that most insurance companies around the world depend on for information. They are nonpartisan. They do all different segments of insurance, transportation, life insurance, annuities, every insurance that's available. They do studies and research on what's happening and what's driving rates, and just, like I said, all over the world, how insurance rates are being affected. And you're not going to be happy to know that insurance rates are rising. And while I get a lot of questions on, well, my vehicles aren't moving, I'm not having any accidents. Well, this is the past 6 months to 8 months. Insurance really looks at the last 5 years of your history to determine your insurance rates going forward. And the unfortunate thing about auto liability is that rates are rising because insurance companies have not made money on auto liability for the past 10 years. We use something called a combined ratio, which is the amount of money an insurance company brings in versus the amount they pay out in claims. And that has been an upside down relationship now for almost 10 years in a row. What's the one good thing that you hear about COVID is that there are fewer accidents, obviously less vehicles on the road. The problem with that is, and someone talked about it earlier, Bob, I think somebody had a question about it, people are driving faster. So the severity of accidents is significantly increased, along with accidents that are more severe. Litigation. You are all in California. I don't have to explain to you what is happening with the legal climate, and is a main driver of these high loss ratios. The plaintiffs bar, unfortunately, is targeting the transportation industry. I live in South Florida. It's probably just as bad in California, but you can watch television for a half an hour and there'll be 10 plaintiffs bar ads telling you how they're going to make you pay, and that transportation companies are all awful. So that's not helpful. There's the other side of that is there are attorney firms that are trying to work against that. So we can talk about that all day long, but that's a whole nother presentation. The driver shortage. There was a driver shortage before the pandemic. It hasn't gotten better. What's happening, though, is some companies are hiring less qualified drivers. So the people behind the wheel aren't as qualified as they probably should have been, and it's causing significant issues. What that means is insurance companies, primary like Lancer and National Interstate, companies that insure you for your primary levels of insurance, are leaving the market or pulling back on how much of this business that they want to write. Because, and anyone who's known me for any length of time, you've heard me say, National Interstate doesn't just insure bus companies, we insure trucking companies and all kinds of crazy transportation operations, but your cargo sues. Your cargo has bones, and those are huge lawsuits that come down the pike. I can tell you that the excess market, if you purchase excess limits or you're required to have excess limit, the excess market is drying up. What we call the capacity in the market for that is going away because because of the litigation, because of all of these factors, insurance companies that take the higher limits don't want to take the risk. So you're seeing less and less companies offer that coverage. So underwriting results, like I mentioned, the combined ratio over the last 9 years has been over 100. And what that means is for every dollar an insurance company takes in, they pay out this year $1.09. So they're losing 9 cents on the dollar. Not a good ratio. And loss frequency, again, we talk about severity and frequency. While frequency we might see is down, we're still seeing losses driven by the distracted driving, as Bob mentioned. Deteriorating road conditions, right? There's lots of construction sites, but now we're getting back into winter for a lot of the people up north, and road conditions are in a lot of states are still deteriorating. And once again, the declining driver profile. And I would urge all of you, and I can't see Bob, but I can see Bob's head nodding up and down about making sure that you're hiring drivers that are experienced. And with everyone getting back to business, hopefully all of you are, you really need to act like those drivers are new and train them on your procedures and policies to make sure that they're ready to be on the road. So loss severity, as I mentioned, litigation is a huge driver. Tort trends, you will also hear me say that tort reform is something that needs to happen in many different places. Again, you have plaintiffs' attorneys on one side, you have defense attorneys on the other, you have attorneys trying to reform and get reforms on tort trends. Medical inflation is, as you know, medical bills aren't getting cheaper, and depending on what happens in this election, we'll see how that gets affected. Distracted driving, again, there's more room on the roads. I know I feel it when I'm driving, and people think that it's okay to take those chances looking at their phones or doing different things. And the poor driver profile, that is something that you absolutely can control. Not to mention vehicles cost more, right? All the electronics in the vehicles. And when there are accidents, not just personal vehicles, but commercial vehicles, those are at a higher cost, which adds to the price of a claim. Nuclear verdicts is something that, these are the shock losses that you hear about. There was just one in Florida. It was a trucking company, a owner-operator trucking company, who the other party was awarded $412 million because they wanted the trucking company to pay because they were just a bad company, and it was a Zoom trial and it sold. And now this company obviously is never going to be able to pay that money, but it's just those shock verdicts and the social inflation that you'll read about and you've seen in the news. Absolutely, it is contributing to what's going on out there. Younger jurors tend to be more sympathetic. The social movement that you've all seen, it contributes to a more popular climate for the settlements to be bigger, right? And plaintiffs' attorney are using psychology tactics to identify jurors that are going to help them win their cases. And I know that Bob and his team have talked about this in the past. It's not going away anytime soon, but there are actually companies out there that are funding litigation. It's a third-party litigation funding that will help pay for those trials to get the outcomes that they want. This little picture on the screen here is one of our Extra Mile magazines that the reptile theory is something that the attorneys are using against you. That was in one of our versions of the Extra Mile, and I'd be happy to send it to anybody who didn't get it or would like to see it. So what can you do, right? What are you going to do? How do you protect your company? And I would tell you that the best thing that you can do, aside, I'm done talking about the drivers. So what I think you can really focus on is, number one, selecting the right broker or agent who understands what you do for a living, understands the passenger transportation business. I think you need to look at the insurance companies that you do business with, right? A-rated by AM Best is what I would suggest, because A-rated carriers have the wherewithal to be able to handle your business and to be around, frankly. Look at your insurance coverages and your limits, and make sure that you work with your broker to make sure that your business is protected. So talking about your broker, when you are talking about a broker, you're really talking about the same situation as you would with your company attorney, with your accountant. You should really interview them, make sure that they're on your team, make sure that they are a true business partner. And if they are an agent or a broker, there's a difference between those two. You want to understand who they're representing to who. How are they paid? How much do they get paid? What markets do they represent? Everyone, I think, understands that your insurance broker comes to the insurance companies to get quotes for you on different coverages. Do you know what markets they have? Do you know if there are other markets that maybe they don't represent that you're not able to get to? What is their relationship with that market? Is your broker finding you a new insurance company every year? I will tell you that when we get a submission in on an account, if an insured has been with 5 different insurance companies over a 5-year period, that is a huge red flag for us. We don't know that a relationship is important to you. We don't know if you're just looking for a lower price, or your broker is just moving you because they get more commission from other markets. You need to understand those relationships. Do they challenge you, right? When you talk to them, do they challenge you? And are you willing to let them challenge you? It's very important that, it's a trusted advisor relationship. You should be working together. They're there to help make you better, not to ruin your business, but keep an open mind. When we talk about insurance companies, we are not all created equal. And I will say this, you've heard me say this, Lancer and National Interstate are probably the 2 companies I would say, along with RLI, I have to add them to the mix. I refer to us as the big 3, right? We're the companies who have been around for a long time. We understand this business. We all have different views on certain aspects of the insurance, but we are all in this for the long run, and we understand what it is that you do. Other companies that don't necessarily specialize in this business, it can be challenging, and you could end up with different insurance companies over different years because of companies getting in and out because they don't understand what it is that you do for a living. Make sure you understand the underwriting and claims expertise and what they do, what their commitment to the industry is, the coverage and service options that they have, and what appetite for risk you have. Taking risk, whether you have a deductible or you have a captive program, or however you are comfortable doing that, those all should play into your decision of who your insurance company is. Stability and diversification. I can tell you that National Interstate, COVID has hit National Interstate significantly. I can tell you that the good news for us is we are diverse and have other businesses, including trucking and ambulance and non-emergency medical and crane and moving and storage. If we didn't, I don't know that we would be able to weather this situation, because we are, I would venture, well over $100 million in losses due to COVID. Keep in mind your company's reputation, right? You all know who shows up at the CBA meetings, who's active in the industry, and that bodes well for you to keep that in mind. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about AM Best, because I know a lot of people have heard that term, A-rated by AM Best, and it's another check on insurance companies, right? It's the oldest and most widely used rating of insurance companies and financial information. And we strive, like most insurance companies strive, to have the best rating we can. And there's a lot that goes into it. We get rated every year. We get checked out by Best every year, like every insurance company. But it's important that you understand that having an A rating isn't like when you were in school, right? A C was okay, a B was good, A is great. It's different. There are almost 3,000 insurance companies in the United States. The majority have an A rating. These are the, as you see on the screen, these are the ratings that insurance companies have. And you'll be, I'm going to show you on the next slide. You might be a little bit surprised, but the number of companies or the percentage of these 3,000 companies that are not A rated is frighteningly low. So if you're with a company that doesn't have an A rating, I would tell you, you should really think twice about using them. So 92% of companies have an A rating. That means there are only 8% of the insurance companies in the US that aren't rated with an A or better. So ask your insurance broker what your insurance providers are rated. It's important for you to understand that they're going to be financially stable and able to be there for you when you need them. So coverage and limits. You know, everyone's required that goes across state lines to have a $5 million limit on their auto liability. Is that enough? Is it enough to protect your company? That's another question that you and your insurance broker should be talking about. Some of you have contracts that require higher limits. Those limits are going to be harder and harder to find because of the risk. So you really want to make sure you understand the market. How much insurance is enough? That's the decision that you have to make of what you're willing to gamble if you do have a significant situation. Excess for motor coach operators, like I said, is being limited. So understand that. If your total fleet is valued over $1 million, most physical damage has a limit of $1 million per occurrence. And with fleets sitting all in the same place, should there be a situation where you have all of your vehicles in one place and God forbid a fire comes through, you're only insured for 1 million unless you purchase excess physical damage. So something to think about. You've seen the cyber crime and the increase in cyber crimes. Every day on the news, it seems like there's more cyber crimes. Do you have cyber liability? Another coverage that a good broker should be able to talk to you about. So risk financing. Everyone, I'm sure, understands that first dollar coverage is probably what most people know about, but there are other options where you can take on risk, including deductible programs, captives, self-insurance. I don't know that that's really a right option, but you don't know what you don't know. So make sure you're sitting down with your broker early, talk about the options, talk about different options that might be right for you that maybe you didn't think about in the past. So be prepared and be educated, right? Quality insurers ask for the same information every year. Lead time is a thing, right? When we get information to look at your business and it expires next week, we can't help you. If you're not looking and starting your insurance renewal process at least 3 months in advance, you're behind. So just think about, you know, what information we're going to ask for, because like I said, we all ask for the same thing. And really think about the picture that you want to paint for us and share your business plans. You know, like Bob referred to, if you're going into a different market or you're going to be doing something that you didn't do before, have you researched that market? Different markets are very litigious. I can tell you that if you're typically operating in California and then you start operating in Las Vegas, totally different legal climate, right? So think about those things. Think about what you need to do to prepare your business for a transition like that. Own your information, right? Just make sure you review it. Make sure that all the information that you provide, make sure you get a copy of your insurance submission, right? You want to make sure that what your broker is submitting to insurance companies is current. It makes sense. Make sure that your website information is the same. I can't tell you how many times we get information in and it doesn't look anything like your website. So we start asking questions. Those are red flags for underwriters. You know, the absence of, this is one of my favorite sayings, the absence of accidents is not the presence of safety. You might be lucky, but lucky isn't going to be a long-term strategy for you. So make sure you're being proactive in your safety tool, using safety tools. Make sure that everyone on your safety team is on the same page, and it's a top-down, bottom-up strategy that everybody thinks that safety is the most important thing to your business. And especially with what's happening with COVID, Bob talked about it. Your policies and procedures are probably different than they have been. Now's the time to take a look at those and make sure that they're up to date and you're following all those guidelines, and make sure that when you have those policies and procedures that you are following them every time in every situation. Because if there's one thing that can help protect you from being sued and from situations that I had mentioned about all of the plaintiff's attorneys, it is making sure that you follow your program. So one size does not fit all, right? Make sure you pick your broker or agent wisely. Know who the insurance companies are, know the options that are available. You know, risk management services, as Bob mentioned, they have things on their website. We have the same passion and commitment to the industry. We have a whole risk management website. If you're new to the safety position and you are with National Interstate, please reach out. Let us make sure you have your login credentials for the website, because it's important that you have access to all of that, especially now. So just wanting to touch on liability in the day of COVID, as Bob mentioned, following CDC and local guidelines are the key. Make sure that those are recognized in your policies and procedures. You as an employer are required to establish a workplace free from hazards, and you can do what you can do. But if you don't follow CDC, if you don't follow local jurisdiction, that's when you're gonna be in trouble. So make sure you're following the social distancing, taking temperatures, disinfecting surfaces, right? All those things that you've heard for the last 8 months, that should become just second nature. And I hate to say this, we're changed forever. This is just where we are, and this is probably the new normal. So you could get claims from your employees, right? But keep in mind, a workers' comp claim is it's obviously serious, but employees have to prove that they contracted COVID on the job, right? That's not as easy as people might think. Don't be combative with your employees, right? You want to be empathetic. People are scared. They're scared for them. They're scared for their families. Reach out to your insurance company. You know, we want to help you, just like every claims situation. We want to be there to help get the facts and collect the information. And what I would warn you against is if multiple people are saying that they contracted COVID from your location, that could be a bit problematic. So you really want to make sure to follow those guidelines to keep your employees safe. Claims from passengers. Same thing. Are you maintaining a standard of care? Are you following your guidelines every time in every situation? Coverage is not automatic. I can tell you, as an organization, many of you know National Interstate is a wholly owned subsidiary of Great American Insurance Company. I can tell you that we've had over 1,000 claims for COVID, and I don't think they're going to go away, but I can tell you that we are working with our task force at our parent company, along with any claims that we get from our customers, to make sure that we have all the information and that we are protecting our customers and the claims that might be brought against them by scrupulous attorneys that might not have all the facts. So there is no one size fits all. Every situation is different. Every situation requires lots and lots of information that we ask for you from, and every state is different, right? Some states are trying to shift that burden from the employee to the employer, and who knows how it's going to all turn out, but there's contradicting suits being filed, and I don't know that we're going to know any of this. I always joke that we're going to know on December 4th, so we'll see if how that all shakes out. You know, you're going to be sued, right? It's the society we live in. You know, how your policies and procedures are in place, how you follow them, your cleaning and disinfecting policies, showing your duty of care. All of these things are going to help you. People sue. It's the society we live in. Make sure you seek counsel. Obviously, work with your insurance company. The U.S. Law Organization is an organization that we work with and many of our customers work with to make sure that you're protected as much as you can be. And as I said before, relationships are more important than ever. How are you keeping in touch with your employees? How are you keeping in touch with your customers? These are your families, right? I mean, this industry is one big family. You want to make sure that you're reaching out, whether you might not have too much to tell them if you're not moving a whole lot, because obviously the lockdown orders are keeping people from being on the road, but make sure you just reach out and tell them you're thinking about them, right? Keep in touch and communicate. Like Bob said, email isn't the best way to communicate. Maybe we're just too old to think it is, but make sure you're communicating. Pick up the phone. Make sure that we know what you're doing in your business. And again, treat your broker like the consultant that they are. They're not your enemy. Have regular meetings, take their calls, invite them to your business to make sure they really do understand what you're doing. And, ask, from a claim standpoint, ask to have reviews with your broker and your insurance company on any claims that you have. Now, some of you don't have a lot of claims because you're a smaller company, and that's fine, but make sure that you understand what's happening on any open claims. And I can tell you that through this time, our claims people have been spending a lot of time trying to get claims closed because they have that extra time, because a lot of new claims aren't coming in. So we're happy to have the time and to keep them able to do that. So National Interstate, just a comment, we started our relief program in the middle of March. We thought it was going to be about a 45-day thing and it was all going to go back to normal. Obviously, that's not happened. April 13th, we extended it. We are currently extending out all of our renewals on our relief program through this time next year, and we will continue to extend as long as our customers keep talking to us and tell us what they need. I will tell you, just this morning, I was invited to an internal meeting that we are working on what's next for our customers. So very soon we will be talking about some additional relief that we are going to be offering. Keep in mind that an insurance company there's a lot of moving parts. We have to make sure that our system is up to date with what we're doing, so our claims people know what's going on, so our brokers know what's going on. So we can't just flip a switch to make changes, but I will tell you that many of you will be happy with what the next plan, the next phase of our plan is to help. And with that, I will open it up to questions, and there is my contact information. I hope most of you have that. I know, Michael, you have this presentation, and I'd be happy to let you share that with the group. And I will stop sharing my screen and we'll see if there are any questions.
Right there, we have one question from Don right now. It says regarding every once in a while I hear about ADA suits being brought against companies for not having ADA compliant websites. Is this a big issue?
I would tell you, Don, that it is a big issue because the ADA it has been very active, and you have to understand if someone is under the ADA mandates and they feel like they're not being treated fairly, they go to the ADA and now they're going to come and be all over your business. So some of those suits or some of those complaints that you see carry significant penalties for you not being in compliance. So again, use the authorities, use the authorities on the compliance, use your insurance companies to help make sure that you are compliant and that your websites are. And Bob, you might also have a comment on that as well, because I know we both see this.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Michelle just said, very important. One of the things that's happening because websites are public is there are simply automated reviews of websites going through kind of an automated type of process. And if anything appears not to be compliant, then there's a demand made via either ADA complaint or another type of filing, or a letter from an attorney or something like that. So it is important to make sure that the website is compliant hearing wise, visual wise. And there are a number of companies that will do that for you or with you. And if you do have a compliant company that does that for you, or a website manager, make sure they're willing to document that and take legal responsibility, at least for your defense, but perhaps for the overall website. So that's part of an agreement you would have with a company who manages your website.
All right. That's the only written question we have right now. Any other, if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and you can hit raise hand or go ahead and type in those questions. Give it another minute here, guys. Bill Allen is requesting to speak, so we'll go ahead and Bill, just go ahead and hit unmute and you should be able to speak now.
Yeah, so I'm just a little unsure on what you're talking about for the website. So if I have a deaf person or something, or a sighted person, they can't see the website, what do you do to solve that?
Well, there are tools that you can use on your website that can be accessible for people who are visually or hearing impaired. And you have to make sure that your website does offer those options, especially if you're selling tickets for public service. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm trying to understand, if you can't hear, our website doesn't have any sound, so that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, that is a problem.
If you can't, well, you can see it though.
Right.
Well, so go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so look, the important issue here is that your site, your website is ADA compliant. And there are certain standards with that any website manager or company that develops websites should be familiar with. If you've used a vendor to develop your website, you need to go back to them and just say to them, is the website ADA compliant? What have you done to do that? It can be a click, it can be audio for people who may be visually impaired and need audio, or maybe the opposite for someone who's has auditory impairment but can see. There's a variety of ways to do that. You're right. It's counterintuitive to think that someone who is hearing impaired can't read the site, but there are people who are visually impaired and hearing impaired. So the point is that if you use a vendor, my recommendation would be go back to that vendor and just ask them, is the site compliant? And what can we do in the least expensive way possible to make it compliant?
And I believe ADA also puts out guidance on their website.
Right, as well.
So you do understand what they're looking for you to be compliant.
Okay, and just switching gear real quick. So like on a renewal, how are you going to estimate your revenue when in California, we don't even know if we'll be operating next year?
Well, Bill, just like we've done since March, what we are doing with our renewals is we're asking our customers for their full vehicle lists, like they have all their vehicles that they have registered. And we're asking how many of those vehicles you're using. And we're offering those reduced premiums, the 75% reduced premiums on the vehicles that you're not using. And like I said, we're working on the next phase that will, I can't fully tell you how the next phase is going to work, but it will be surrounding the registration or unregistration or deregistration of vehicles.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about having conversations with your broker and your insurance company, and making sure that we understand what you're doing, how many vehicles you're using. You know, Bob made a comment about Lancer letting people add vehicles on and off at a few days at a time. We have a similar situation where, as long as you're keeping in touch with your broker and saying, look, I'm using this vehicle for this weekend and then I'm not going to use it again for a month, we're allowing accommodations for those situations, even if it's in that suspended or reduced status.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I have to agree with Michelle 100%. Just be in touch with your broker. Uh, the moving through the application process for renewal it will be challenging a little bit, but we understand that. I mean, we know what's going on, and on a case by case basis, you know, account by account basis, working with your broker, the goal is to for everyone to keep their customers just like you want to keep your customers, and to have the proper information about how to provide the service, in this instance, insurance to the customer. So just talk with your broker. Michelle's that is key. That communication piece is key. And the better companies have the better brokers and have better communication.
Thanks, Bill. All right, we have Ginny has another question. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I was just listening with Michelle saying, you know, which vehicles are you using? I only have one vehicle. So if it's either going to be used or it's not going to be used. And so the idea of, well, just which vehicles are you using? Well, sometimes none, because I only have one.
Right.
And I don't want that to be, oh, well, I guess then we just can't insure you anymore because you're not doing enough business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That kind of caught my attention and like, oh my gosh, I'm in real trouble here. So,
yeah, no, I don't know, Ginny, I understand what you're saying. And if you were, I don't know who your insurance company is, but if you
I'm
were,
Lancer.
I'm sorry.
I'm with Lancer.
Okay. So I would tell you that in your situation, if you are using that vehicle once every, or once every couple weeks or once a month, however that's working right now, you would be on a policy that you would be paying a 25% premium. So we are offering what our program allows for is a 25% premium. And then we just have you talk to your broker when you're using it. And if it's that sporadic, if it's once every couple weeks or once a month, then we just leave that alone. But if it turns out that you start to use it every week, then we're going to ask you to put the full coverage back on it, or we will increase that to full rate that makes sense for the business that you're doing. And I don't know, Bob, I can't speak to how you guys are handling that, or if her broker's involved, or if you know who her broker is. But I would absolutely tell you to talk to your broker still.
Right. Ginny, the fact is, at the time of renewal, we're still renewing accounts similar to yours with the minimal coverage and the daily rate if you use the vehicle. We're renewing accounts like that all the time, particularly small accounts under 5 units. So that shouldn't be an issue. When is your renewal?
March.
Oh, okay. All right. So
yeah, I renewed literally a week before we were shut down.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay. So lucky for Ginny. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So just don't, I wouldn't worry about it too much at this point because you're only halfway through the policy. So let's just keep doing what you're doing. Keep in touch with your broker. I agree with that 100%. And just call or email. Let us know what you need or what's going on. And we'll continue to work
basically,
with you.
Without revenue, it's been difficult to even pay the premium. And in fact,
we understand that.
I've gotten a cancellation notice because I misunderstood the whole scenario. I'm working hard to get that money together, but I do want to be able to use the bus when I finally can. So
right, I understand. So please work with your broker on that, and if you want to talk separately about that specific, you know, the communication issue of what's required, let's do that separately. But please talk to your broker, send me an email, give me a call, and I'll connect you with the right people.
And I know that you're, here's what I will tell you too, Ginny. I know you're not a National Interstate customer, but I can tell you that Lancer and National Interstate are trying everything we can to help our customers stay in business. We are not trying to put you out of business. Please understand that. I see there was a question on deposits from Kevin. Kevin, what I can tell you that we are doing things that if you would have asked me 10 months ago, if we would do on deposits and payment terms and what we're doing, I would have told you were crazy. We have decreased the amount of our deposits. We're working as much as we can with our customers to make sure that we are all again, talking to each other every month, making sure we can help in any way that we can. And with the reduced premiums that people have and stretching out the payments as much as we can, we've been pretty successful in helping our customers.
And we're reiterating the same thing. Just let's have a separate conversation and work with your broker on that, Jenny.
Kevin
Like
said-
I said, we really are trying to do everything we can. Look, we don't want you to go out of business. We want you all to survive.
Right, absolutely.
Anything that we can do. I can tell you that the people who stop talking to us, when someone doesn't call us back and doesn't tell us what they're doing, those are we don't know. We're not fortune tellers. We can't read your minds. We just want it to be an open communication with your broker and us so we can help you any way we can. Now, we might not always agree on everything, but I will tell you that I have not seen the level of our team working to do whatever they can for our customers.
And Kevin says, thank you for being so helpful. So
You got it, Kevin.
All right, I not seeing any other questions right now. No other raised hands, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Vicki, you want to come on for the? Thank you.
Yes, I want to thank Bob and Michelle. You did a great job. It's got a lot of people thinking about a lot of things now. I know I am. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Remember, next week is our 5th and final part of our educational series. The topic will be operators' insights, cleaning solutions, and promotions. So hopefully everybody has a great week, and let's hope these quotes start coming in and these wheels on the bus start rolling.
Absolutely.
Have a great week, and again, we'll see you all next Friday, the 30th, for the final in our series.
Great.
Stay safe,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.